Hey everyone, it's Evangeline here at eTrailer, and today we have the Thule Epos 2-bike platform rack. This is going to be a bike rack that is designed for versatility to carry bikes of different shapes and different sizes, but you also have fun bonus features like tail lights, license plate relocation, and a very interesting compact position. So we'll take a look at those different features and see if they are a fit for you, your bikes, your vehicles, and your adventures, all right here at etrailer.com. Loading the bikes up is what tests the versatility of this bike rack, because while there are different touch points for a single bike, easy to put on there, when you put multiple bikes, that's when it gets a little tricky. So let's cover those different touch points and focus on the different types of bikes you may have. Whether you have different style frames, maybe you have fenders, different types of tires, or even weight capacity. For your frames, whether you have a step-through bike, maybe an alternate frame, or a carbon fiber frame bike, you can move these mounts to different spots. So usually the main mast holds on to the frame of your bike, but you can also put it on the tire. So this right here, from below the handlebars along the frame to this quadrant of tire, are safe zones. If you put it to the outside of the rear tire, or on your front tire, or on your handlebars, not safe zones. For different types of frames, whether you have a step-through frame, maybe an alternate frame, or even a carbon fiber frame bike, there's different ways you can use this mast to accommodate for them. Now, a general rule of thumb is along the frame as well as this part of your rear wheel are good spots to hold or secure your bike. Don't put it on the handlebars or on your front tire or the rear of your rear tire, because it's not as secure of a fit. The mast has a lot of pivot to it, so you can move this along the frame of your bike, but then you can also move the mast up and down to adjust for where you need it to secure. And then the cradle pivots around as well, so you can get your best fit. So when you've found a good spot to secure your bike, you then get your strap, and this goes around either your tire or your frame. Notice how on the strap you can see that there is metal inside it. That way you can't just cut through it. And another security precaution is going to be this lock core. So the way this works is you first want to tighten down your bike rack, and you can utilize the ratcheting mechanism here, so you don't have to pull the whole thing. And then you get your key. So this fits into the lock core, but you do have to push in on that core as you turn. And once that's secure, you're then unable to engage that strap lever. So if you have things like fenders or baskets or panniers or other accessories, you can see here how having that adjustability for where you secure your bike can help out. Now for the tires, so the minimum is going to be 16-inch wheels and the maximum is going to be 29-inch wheels. So this is actually my bike here, and it has 29ers on, but it also has 2.35-inch wide tires. And that's definitely within capacity. The maximum is going to be 3.2-inch wide tires. If you do have a fat tire bike though, that's okay. You can still get the Thule extra large tire straps, and that has extra length there to secure it. While these look like they might be long enough to secure them, notice the way they are angled. Depending on how your bike is situated, it might not reach with just normal straps. Securing the bike involves getting the strap around your rims and then into our lever system here. Pull it as tight as you can get, but also you can utilize this ratchet just like the mast. This secures your wheels. Please make sure if you do carry your electric bikes, if the batteries are removable, do so, keep them in your vehicle. The extra movement on the road is not safe for those batteries. Plus, it will make your bikes a little bit lighter as you load them up. So with everything secure, all our straps are good, the mast is secure as well. Double check those before you drive. And let's take a look at how this performs out on our test course. Going on to our speed bumps, we're first going to do our alternating speed bumps. This is going to mimic hitting a curb or leaving a driveway. And then we do our up and down speed bumps. So we can see that up and down movement of our bikes. Looks pretty good. Everything's still sturdy. Now we're coming up to our slalom, where we're gonna do our quick evasive maneuvers. So this is where we make our sharp turns, or our U-turns as well. So we can see how fast our bikes move around. So I can see the bikes visibly tilt as I make those quick maneuvers, but all in all, everything seems pretty stable. So I drove around with it for a bit, got to put it through different situations and see how the bikes and the bike rack performs, and I have some different thoughts about it. I do like how the different points of contact cinch down on the bikes, because I felt secure in its fit, that it wasn't going to fall off at any moment. But with that, it was also a little bit extra hassle to get the different bikes on there, especially when you get to the 3-bike bike rack. That's when it gets tricky, and you can check that one out here at etrailer. And there is a difference between using the mast to secure the rear wheel versus the frame. So with this front bike, super secure, super solid, almost zero movement. This rear bike, there is a little bit of wiggle, but compared to other bike racks and compared to what I've seen and experienced, that wiggle is still pretty minimal, and I'm very confident that it still stays on the rack and everything is tightened down. Things that may make more of a hassle as you load up multiple bikes is watching out for seat posts as well as handlebars, and watching out for pedals. For the pedals, not only do you have to think of the pedal on the other bike, but you also have to think about the mast for the other bike. Is it frame mounted? Is it wheel mounted? Will it hit your pedal as it goes on? Having a second person there holding a bike as you get the other one set up actually helps out a lot. Then you know exactly where to strap things down, so the second time onwards, much easier. I do like the way this tilts away. You have this large lever here, although I know for some people, especially with larger shoes, they do tend to kick at that license plate as they step on this lever. But once that lever is depressed, you then just bring the bike rack down. Now notice how I am using the bikes themselves as support. Not ideal in most situations, but there's not really anything I can do for this rack. So why would you tilt your bike rack away? Well, if you want access into your hatch, your trunk, or to lower your tailgate. Because of how far down this tilts away, we have plenty of clearance between the mast as well as our hatch door. What will not change though is going to be the base. So if you have a spare tire or a recessed hitch, if this doesn't reach, there's not really anything you can do about that. Which leads me to some measurements. Here, we're gonna measure at the center of the hitch pinhole, because no matter what vehicle we have this on, that measurement's gonna stay the same. So from that hitch pinhole to the closest point, which is right here at the base, that's gonna be 8 inches away. Now the angle does start down here, and that's going to be 5 inches of distance. And that will help you figure out if your hitch sits out far enough for this bike rack to work. I do have some pretty light bikes here though, so be mindful that if you do have the max weight capacity, which is 66 pounds per bike, that's also the weight you are tilting away and lifting back up. And if you don't want all that weight on a single bike for support, you might not want to tilt away. For the length this will add to your vehicle, we're gonna measure again at the center of the hitch pinhole, and to that foot lever, that's gonna be 33.5 inches. And that's pretty compact for a 2-bike platform rack. If you have a small garage or need to park into a tight spot, that's a measurement to look out for. And when you're ready to take the bikes off, we're gonna take a look at the more compact position. Here we can remove the strap. So with this out of the way, we can then push the mast out and then take the bike off. And this is where it gets interesting, because with bikes of different shapes and sizes, you're gonna have different experiences. Like look here how we have our mast in the way of our front tire. If I wanted to remove this, I actually go in the direction of that front tire, making sure the pedals are out of the way, we're gonna go down. So almost like a ramp, but if this was on a vehicle with higher ground clearance, you might appreciate using the add-on ramp for this bike rack, especially with heavier bikes. That will allow you to go up and onto the rack, although you're still gonna have to dodge all those different masts and pedals and handlebars, things like that. Without the bikes, it definitely takes up less space. And there's some things here, depending on how long you have this stored or not in use for, you can keep the straps in their ratchet mechanisms, but for longevity purposes, there are little sleeves that you can tuck them into. Sleeves for the tray, as well as sleeves for the mast straps. Folding it up, similar to, if you're familiar with a Thule Easy Fold XT, which is an older bike rack, it folds up just like it, where it looks kind of like a briefcase on your hitch. This goes together, then you have the mast there as well. If you're taking this off, perfectly fine. If you want it held together because maybe you'll jostle this around, I personally take the straps from the trays and wrap it around the second tray, and that creates a stronger cinch. Now the compact position though is for storage purposes. So Thule does not recommend driving with it folded up like this, only with the trays down. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, as you are driving around with this with bikes or without bikes, they do recommend at least every 300 miles, double check that anti-rattle lever and see if you can continue tightening it down before you continue again. So that's a big old summary of the Thule Epos, and on its own, it does work with carrying around those heavy bikes of different shapes and different sizes, but let's compare it with some other bike racks you might be looking at for your different bikes. If you are looking for great weight capacity, but also has an included ramp, then something to look at is the Hollywood Rack's Destination E. It has a very similar tilt-away feature where it goes almost all the way down, giving you a lot more access to your hatch or to your trunk, and it has a really high weight capacity for those heavy electric bikes. The main differences though is that the cable locks aren't as easy to use since they are cable locks versus this where it secures it by the mast. Plus, the Destination E does not have taillights. So if you want to take advantage of the taillights, the wiring, the license plate relocation system that this has, there's that difference. But another main difference is going to be the ramp. The Hollywood Rack's Destination E has a ramp included, although not stored on the bike rack. It all starts with the bike rack off of your vehicle. And this is how it looks. We have the bag on it right now because if you do have it stored in your garage or in your shed or in a location where it can get kind of dusty, you might prefer to have the bag on there. But we'll take this off. It is not included with your bike rack, but something you can get added onto it. We can see better now the two wheels on this bike rack now that the bag is off, and these are going to be some hard wheels, which means it's good for pavements, concretes, your garage floor. What's not as good is that there's only two of them, so you do have to be careful as you are rolling this around. You may want to lift the end a little bit so it doesn't drag, and then that way you can maneuver it around to get close to your vehicle. So still a little bit of weight you have to lift, but not as bad as carrying the entire rack. The shank comes down, and with it just on its wheels, it actually doesn't go down all the way. You are gonna have to push down on the shank, which lifts the bike rack up, and then it snaps into place. And now we can lift the stinger out. So if you have an 1.25" hitch, this is fine on its own. We have a 2-inch hitch receiver, so we're using the included adapter that screws onto that shank. But with that all ready, we can then lift the entire rack up and into the hitch receiver, push in, and instead of having to look back and forth to get lined up with the hitch pin hole, we're going to push the stinger back in and let the stinger do its work and find the spot for you. So it's cool that our Thule Epos has lights because then we know that we're extra safe on the road, but the downside to it is you're gonna have to figure out how to power it. So you do have a 4-way plug with this bike rack, which matches 4-pole wiring on your vehicle. If you don't have wiring, you can find our custom fits for your car available here on our website. Also, if you don't want to use wiring or you don't want to get wiring added to your vehicle, you can get the Thule Epos without lights, and that just has reflectors for that safety. So just plug this in, and of course, always follow the safety protocols of if you have excess, find a spot to wrap that around your bike rack or your hitch. To tighten down the bike rack, we have this anti-rattle lever, and it's currently locked, so we're not able to remove it until we unlock it, and then this flips out. But notice how it flips out. It does make contact with our wheel, so fortunately, it folds up as well. So as you tighten down your bike rack to remove that wobble and that sway, you do have to figure out what's the best way for you to get that leverage, but still also get that clearance. So here we have good tension. So you can tell that by shaking the bike rack and seeing if there's any movement inside your hitch receiver. So once it's good, you flip this back in and then lock it back down. So there's two things I check afterwards. I like to give it a good old shake test to make sure it's fully secure in the hitch receiver. I like to check the lights to make sure that my wiring works. But other than that, that's it for the setup process. It was pretty quick, pretty simple, especially if you know what you're doing. Now the lever part for the anti-rattle was a little bit tricky since it does take up some time and some effort, but other than that, it was pretty simple. Now we're ready to load up our bikes and we're ready to ride. So we've established that this does have a lot of versatility for bikes of different shapes and sizes, and I hope I was able to explain how it accomplishes that versatility. Remember that your experience with this bike rack may be different depending on what vehicle you have this on. It does have a lot of versatility for different vehicles, so with that 1.25" and 2" adapter included with this bike rack, with how it has that shank rise to give you some good ground clearance in case your bike rack is or your hitch is low to the ground. But also there are solutions for if you have too much ground clearance, you may consider getting a ramp. If you don't have wiring, you can get wiring here at eTrailer, or you can consider the Thule Epos without taillights if you don't want to get wiring. So all in all, this was a big look at the Thule Epos platform rack for 2 bikes right here at etrailer.com. My name is Evangeline, and I hope you enjoyed the journey.